Alrighty, this is D&D for Newbies, so I'm very excited to show you guys this stuff. We're going to talk about the basics. So the first basic thing is, first of all, please appreciate my cute little mascot. Look at him. Look at my precious boy. Feel free to name him. But the first thing is, what is D&D? And I actually stole this off the Wizards of the Coast Dungeons & Dragons actual website. So, thank you for the vibe. But Dungeons & Dragons, the players form an adventuring party who explore fantasy worlds together as they embark on epic quests and level up an experience. The Dungeon Master, also known as the DM, is the game's referee and storyteller. There's no winning or losing in D&D, at least not in the conventional way. At its heart, D&D is a game that focuses on storytelling. And so this is, I love, absolutely love this definition because I agree with it. And something that I think that it talked about later on the page is like working together as a team. It's a huge team collaboration game, as well as your goal is to tell a story, and it's epic quests that could be full fantasy, that could be a little bit more steampunk, that could be very sci-fi. So you can have so many different options, and it's still considered D&D. There's also a ton of other tabletop role-playing games out there, some that use like main six-sided dice, some that are more choice place, and so on and so forth. So like there's lots of options, and find the niche that works well for you. So let's talk a little bit about the basics here. So this is something that I actually used to teach. I used to DM for a group of kids, like straight up like children, from ages 10 to like 15, 16. And this was what I used to teach them, and I loved it. There's 3 parts to everything in D&D. There's the setup, the decision, and the results. So we're going to kind of go into each of these a little bit more, but the setup is at its heart a situation's described, and your party asks questions to clarify, so you figure out what's going on. Then there's the decision. You analyze the situation, you decide how you're going to proceed based on what's going on, what your character would choose, what your party's going to choose, and then you have the result. So this is where you might roll the dice, and the DM's going to resolve things for you and tell you what's going to happen. So let's talk a little bit more in depth. We have the setup. So this is a scene set, situation explained, and your questions are answered. So this could be something like, all right, you are walking in a forest and you hear a noise off to the side, and you go kind of looking to see what you hear, and you see a giant plant that is moving, and it looks like there's a pair of legs sitting up in the mouth as it's chewing, and you hear a man screaming. That's the scene set. Now you may ask, like, does it look like we can get to him in time? How slow is he being eaten? You could also ask, like, is there any trees around nearby? So you kind of like ask clarifying questions to understand what's going on, as like what you would be observing as you're looking around. Then you make a decision. So this is how you as a character, as well as your party, are going to proceed. And something that's really important that we'll kind of touch on a little bit later is that your party, you want to make sure that you're using etiquette and listening, and it's not just you. It is not a main character video game. It is a group endeavor. And you should build characters that are going to fit the group. Please don't build loner characters that are like, I'm gonna be a jerk, because that's what my character would do, which we'll also touch on more later in character building. But you're gonna analyze the situation, decide how to proceed. So there's a couple of things that I like to say to consider. One is, what can you possibly change or not change? You can't just, especially if you're at like a super low level, you can't just magically bamf the guy out of there, right? You can't, in our example. But you can go grab his legs and try to pull him out. The other things to consider are the character sheet, things that you are good or bad at. So skill bonuses that may give you a boost or a detriment. So would it make sense for the super weak wizard character to go try to grab the guy's legs and pull him out? Or would it make more sense for like the beefy fighter type to go grab the guy's legs and pull him out? So try to play off of your character sheet. But the other thing to consider is your character and character experiences. What would you do in your character's shoes? Maybe your wizard friend over here that we were kind of just talking about is has a deep-rooted trauma in his backstory about his dad being eaten by a plant. So even though that wizard is not the strongest, he might be the first to get in there because he's going to react like it, right? So think about the stuff that your character has experienced as you are written your character and how they would react. The other thing to consider that we kind of talked about is your party. What might your party decide and how can they help? You are working as a team. So maybe the wizard is going to be like, oh, this is what needs to happen. I'm going to look and see what type of plant this is, and I'm going to tell the fighter to go tickle the outside of it because I'm not getting in there, and then he'll spit out the guy, right? So there's a lot of different ways you can work through things. And the other thing that's cool is that there's no wrong answer, okay? I mean, there might be some wrong answers, like being a jerk, but there's no wrong answer, which is what I love about D&D, and things have different results in different stories. Then, this is where things get resolved. So you've made your decision. The strength character decides to go up and pull on the guy's legs, right? In our example. The DM is going to ask for possibly a skill check or something is going to happen, and they're going to ask our fighter to roll to try to see if they can muster the strength to pull this guy out. And so most rolls in D&D are done on a d20 for like decisions like this. And so we have a d20 scale. 1 is the absolute worst, 20 is extraordinary, 10 is the smack dab middle. And depending on the things that you're good at or bad at, you're gonna be adding numbers or subtracting numbers from that. So it's possible for a strength super strong character to slip and fall and to land on his booty if he rolls a nat 1. But it's also possible for a wizard who is deep-rooted in trauma about this guy being eaten to rush up and pull him out with a natural 20, even though he has a negative score to strength. And depending on how hard the task is, the DM will set the DC, or difficulty class, which is often kept secret. So if the DC, I say, oh, the plant's not holding on to him too strong, and so that's going to be like a DC 12. Then it's possible for a wizard to roll high enough, and it's possible for a fighter to roll low enough, but more than likely, play to your skill sets. See what makes sense for your character. So, those 3 things are kind of like the basis for D&D for me. We have our situation, our decisions, and then the result. And so everything kind of falls into those categories. So we're gonna open up for questions now in just a second. If you are watching this on YouTube, let us know what you think and ask your own questions down below, and stay tuned for the next video on character creation.